Hello folks, I'm L.A. Little, and this is your weekly TA wrap. Well, we take a look at these markets from a neoclassical perspective and ask ourselves what happened last week and what does it tell us about the coming one. I do show I do it once a week, every Sunday night, live at 9 o'clock Eastern Time here, from the base of what has become a soaked and drenched Rocky Mountains. Every Sunday, weekly show, Monday through Thursday, daily show. You can catch it here live each evening, 9 o'clock Eastern Time, where we take a look at, basically what's moving the markets, what's going to move the markets, and, how you can position yourself and benefit from that. So if we look back at last week, and I'm going to bring up the S&P 500, we had talked about the fact that we were going to see more than likely some sort of retrace to the downside, and if at best, some sort of a sideways action. And bear with me a second here as I get my charts up. Let me get them over here in place. Okay, so this is our weekly view, and we'll pull this in some, and then we've got a daily view as well. So this is the weekly view, and what I want to do is bring up the daily view, so let me pull that over here. And what we were talking about was that we had over-unders, if you remember, on the daily view, most of the indexes, some of the sectors, and essentially an over-under is where you get a two-bar reversal. It comes after an extended move, and we had somewhat of an extended move. And as we talked about Thursday, when we were setting up for Friday's trade, which happened to be sideways, is that the probabilities favored some sort of a sideways to down action next bar off a two-bar reversal. But I wouldn't get all that excited about it, I believe was the words that I used, because that two-bar reversal really came in with almost the same volume Thursday as versus Wednesday, and the move wasn't all that extended yet. So some sort of a sideways trade, potentially down, was what we were looking for into Friday. We got a sideways trade. Market really didn't give much of anything back. And then tonight, what we see is Larry Summers no longer being considered, withdrawing his name from the Fed running, and the markets are up almost 1%, it looks like, pretty much across the board. That's true of almost everything. The dollar's down, euro, pound, so forth, all of them up. Bonds up big. Everything's up big except for the dollar. And it's because they believe that whoever gets appointed now will be another Bernanke type appointment, which will continue to flood the market with easy dollars, and the market just loves it. And so it's trading up on that news tonight. I expect that's going to carry around the world. You're going to see it in Asia, you're going to see it in Europe, and you're going to see it here on the open tomorrow. And all of that sets up to mirror or actually complement what we saw happening here on the daily chart, and that is, we saw the reversal back here about a week and a half ago. We knew that was the time that we had finished off the testing that we were doing down here against support, and that more than likely we were going to get a flip back around and have this thing go higher, get over the swing point, which it did, then get up into resistance, which is what it's done. The last bar of interest is the swing point low that we're doing a retest, regenerate on. We went up into that thing, hit it with decent volume, but not enough to take it out. And primarily not because of the volume there, but the volume associated with the breakdown bar. With this spike up tomorrow, if it holds overnight, if we take 1% up off of this and we're trading 1687, 1% is another 16 points. 16 onto that takes you to about 1703. That high was around 1709. You can see how we're going to break over swing point highs and go for the highs. So the setup here on the SPX, at least the way it's starting to look, is to trade higher, trade up into potentially new highs in front of the Fed meeting, assuming that the taper will be 10 to 15 billion at most, and that more than likely we're going to get a replacement to Bernanke, who's going to be also a helicopter bin type Fed head, right? Which will just flood the money from a helicopter is what he said he'd do, and that's what he has done. And the market likes that. So S&Ps, both on the daily, on the weekly, they've done exactly what they were supposed to do. Got a little sideways move. If in fact this holds overnight and you get to spike up, then you've got a little AB. Well, actually, you don't even have an ABCD structure. It never took place on the S&Ps. So essentially, you have a range trade that can take you back to the top of the range and probably give you some sort of a new high. And the only reason I would say the new high is because if you go look at the NASDAQ, now this is the weekly on the NASDAQ, you saw it break over the highs, up at new highs. And if we pull up the daily view of it, you can see a break over multiple highs, and it's consolidating up there 4 days, 4 bars now. That's ready to take another spike up. Now the NASDAQ actually has the ABCD structure. Your A point is back here. Your B point is this high on the 10th. Your C point is the small pullback. That structure actually is fairly strong. 35.78 takes you to about 130 points, 140 points. You add that onto here, you can see how that can take you up fairly high, 38.44. We closed Friday at 37.22. So that's another 120 points if in fact it materializes and runs to its projected target. NDX not as strong. Actually, it's been a little bit weaker, but you still see the strength in it. The problem there has been Apple. Apple's came back quite a bit. If we take a look at Apple here, we can see that. But you can see how this, even with the weakness in Apple, big sell-off and a large position holding, hasn't been able to bring the NDX back, even with that kind of damage, still hanging up here just like the NASDAQ. The Russell doing the same thing. The Russell's pushing higher on the weekly. You can see it on the daily coming up. It wants to go attack the highs, make new highs. And even the Dow got into the groove last week because we're doing rejiggering on the Dow. You can see the big spike up. That's probably the largest percentage gains in a week for the Dow in probably years now. You can see this 5 days just almost straight up. And that's because of the rejiggering. You're taking out the weakest ones on Friday and putting in the strong. And so they front run that news and run it higher. So index wise, they all continue to point higher. They got their 1 day pullback, which really turned out to be a little sideways move. And now the markets want to try to work higher. Let's look at the sectors. Now the sectors were a little bit different. We can start with the transportation. Transportation, remember, pulled back into a retest regen area. It had already previously been retested, so it's really just an anchored support area now. It pulled back into that area, held, no volume, coming back into it. You can see the huge volume differences here. And now it's regenerating or pushing back up towards the high. That's really a range trade up in this area. You can see it on the weekly. If you go to the daily, it's more apparent. So you got a string of swing point lows, a string of swing point highs. You break over them. You come back in now on a daily basis and do your retest, and you're going to regenerate higher. Going to go after the highs, 119.45. SMHs, the semiconductors, they had a huge run up. Here's the weekly. You can see they're pushing up towards that. 39.72. They got the 39.66, so they didn't get over it. It is a swing point high on the daily. On the weekly. If you look at the daily, you've also got a swing point high up there. You're pushing right at it. You're hanging right at it. 4 days of consolidation. If this pushes over it tomorrow, which it looks like it's going to want to, and can hold it, that's a multiple break on multiple swing points. The only caution here is you've already had a big move, so it's going to diminish that push. But still, it should get a push as a result of it. XLB, same sort of scenario, breaks over the high. So you can see the story here. Here's your weekly over the top. If you go back to the daily, consolidating over the top, multiple swing points broken. picture perfect stuff. The XLF, which had been one of the leaders most of the last year and a half, is really consolidating, doing a little bit more consolidation on the weekly. On the daily, also 4 days into resistance, holding after a move off the bottom. This one's going to go after the next swing point. If it can get over that, it just has another one at the top. So even the weakest ones recently are still showing good characteristics on the daily charts. And if you remember, most of these, other than the XLP, XLU, they hadn't even changed trend on the intermediate term. They all held bullish. So you can't really fault the market in any way with respect to the bullishness. XLI over the highs. If you look at it on the daily, consolidation at the top over the highs, multiple swing points broke, wants to carry farther. XLK, and you can see the story here. Every one of them almost the same. XLK is a little bit weaker, testing the highs. That's on the weekly, wants to break over it, and you can see the same thing on the daily. The utilities and the consumer, not discretionary, but consumer staples have been the weaker ones. This is the staples. You can see the big consolidation taking place on the weekly. On the daily, it actually got over a swing point high. It looks like it wants to move into this resistance zone. That's probably as far as it will get, and then we'll get some sort of a pullback off of it. The utilities actually haven't even been able to move, but with the bonds soaring, I suspect these guys are going to find a bid tomorrow. That's your weekly chart. Here's your daily. A lot of volume coming out of this at the lows, but I suspect it to get some sort of bounce. With the direct competitor to the utilities is the interest rates, and they're falling tonight. XLV wants to go after the highs. Nice consolidation, potential ABCD up. If you look at it on the daily chart, you can see a nice drive higher. It's into resistance. It's got two swing point highs. If it can break over both of those, it can get a nice push off of them. The XLY is the discretionary. This one also was one of the leaders. You can see how strong it's been on the weekly. Came back in, did the retest, regenerate on a weekly, trying to go higher. Potential ABCD up. On the daily, nice push up, going after the highs. Looks just like the XLV we just looked at. Let's go to the OX markets right quick. So if we look at them, we'll start with the bonds because the bonds are probably the most important piece. What was important with the bonds is that they stopped this slide. And they've been sliding, big percentage move, about 20%. They moved down to this area. They tested on a weekly almost the bottom. 102.11, they got as low as 102.19. So 8 cents from the bottom, not nearly as much volume. That's a good test. It's not a complete test. You'd like to see it go under it, but it didn't. And sometimes that's the way it works. So the test comes in, can't push lower, tries to push higher, gets to the 104 mark, which was resistance off of this bar, which is the September 3rd bar. As it gets into that, and tries to get into higher prices, it fails one more time, is still stuck there, comes back, and tomorrow, assuming that this carries overnight, it's going to try to get up into this resistance zone. This thing, in my opinion, can actually get a lot higher, and the reason for that is you saw money come into it here back on, and I've pointed this out several times, on the 23rd. So money comes into it on the 23rd, you push much higher, right? You come back deep. That's very normal when you've had such a bearish trend. You come back in deep, you can't break the bottom. When that happens, look for money to pour into this thing and try to push it higher, which means it can actually get to that swing point high, maybe even some of these others. Now, it's going to have a resistance on the way up, but if you start breaking swing point highs, all of a sudden you've got a different trade going on, and the money will actually follow that first set of money that comes in. If we look at gold and silver, gold actually had a big week down. It comes down, this price point it was trying to get into was 124.70. It gets very close, 126.21. Gets just into the top of the support zone. And let me see, 124.70. Yeah, 126. So almost into the support zone. Didn't quite get there, but you can see the volume coming in 43 on a weekly, coming into 109. The volume's just not there. Now, the trend, of course, has been down, So the big bar on the, remember on the way up, this big bar was the test. Well, it got up into that and got to the top of it. That was this resistance up here. That's where it failed. That led to the larger retrace. Now you're back into support, almost into support. You want to try to flip around. If we go to the daily and look at it, it actually did a 2-bar reversal after an extended move. And it's kind of a hammer reversal, which says it probably is going to try to pop back up. The bar it's going to try to get back into on the daily is 132.36. If we go back over to the weekly, that bar is 130.51. So I think somewhere in between here and there is where it's going to try to get to. 132, oh yeah, the bottom of this, not the top, 130.51. And then the bar that you saw over here on the daily, right, the top of this bar, 132. So somewhere between 130.50, 132.36. That's where it's going to try to get to. That was the breakdown area. That's where you would expect the sellers to show up. Let's see if silver shows the same thing. And if we look at silver, yeah, almost exactly the same story. A little different scenario. I mean, it's coming into a different set of bars, but it also coming back into support on the weekly. Let's see what the daily, same sort of thing. This one didn't do nearly as bad on the way down. It held that big bar, the 15th of August, which is actually more bullish. It makes me think for sure that this thing will try to jump back up to the top of it. Let's see if the junk bonds are mirroring the TLT. They should be. Yeah, see, so they're trying to put in their little bottom on the weekly, and on the daily they're up at resistance, and they're going to test resistance, try to get back into that high. The dollar, on the other hand, is going to continue selling off. You can see the damage that was done. Nice big bounce up. It fails, comes back. It actually looked like that was a good breakout. It got over the swing point high, but it turned out to be false. It's broken down. Looks like it's coming right back into support, and we'll have to test support again and see what it wants to do. Oil market has been pushing up, and when we looked at the XLE, it was trying to break out. Oil market on a weekly, you can see this nice big move up, still in position to move higher and go test the highs one more time, and we should see that right away if it's going to do it. And I'm looking to see if there's anything else. Let's see what copper's doing. All right, copper, this is the weekly. It got up to the swing point lows. That's where it found resistance again, fell back. Let's see what the daily looks like. Yeah, just can't get anything going. They'll probably get another pop tomorrow because they're coming back into some good volume bars now. And you got volume sitting at the top again. So this is actually not a bad looking chart. Didn't do the under-over, did it? 39.11. Yeah, it actually did. Got to the bottom, back under it. It's not an extended move though. There is an ABCD structure in place on the way down. That is from 41.48 down to here. That's almost a buck. And a buck off of this would take you to 39.32. We got to 39.11, so it's already finished it. So that actually looks like it can try to bounce back the other way. All right, let's see. No questions. All right, I'm going to push over. I want to look at the foreign markets. So let me take a little bit of time here and see what the world markets look like. And most of these are going to mirror ours in that they're all trying to move to highs. So we'll start with Australia. Let's see what they're doing. That swing point high on the weekly is 52.29. We closed at 52.14. So you got to think they're going to attack that this week and try to break it out. Nice big run all the way up. Let's see what the daily looks like. Yeah, even left volume at the top. They should go right back up there. Try again. India. So I'm just going to go in order here that I have them listed in. So India, big range trade. This thing's a mess with the rupee getting devalued as much as it has. No volume on this pullback though, so that actually looks like it's going to flip around and try to go back up and test resistance. Let's look at Brazil. So Brazil feeding China. China itself is finding more and more strength. So Brazil is back up into retest regions on the lows. So that low on a weekly, top of it's 54,952. We got to 54,740. So we got within about 200 points and did a doji. Decent volume though. Look at the volume coming back up on this. Let's look at the daily. Yeah, perfect. So you're pushing up with volume on each of these spikes, right? And then you tail off with nothing. This thing's going to flip around and go higher again. So Brazil still looks to want to go up and test that on that weekly. Go up and test that swing point. Actually, that retest regen, the very top of the bar, 54,952. Let's flip over to Europe. How about the CACs? Let's see what the CACs looks like. All right, so going right after the highs. Volume's decent. The pullback had no volume, right? The push up has volume. That's going to go after the high, 41.23. Let's see what the daily looks like. It's right there at them. We should take them out tomorrow. Consolidation at the highs. That's begging to break out. Let's see what the DAX looks like. So the weekly on the DAX going right after the highs. So big spike up, going right after the highs. That top is 8557. If I look at it on the daily, yeah, it's already over swing point highs, consolidating. It's going to go after the highs too. The FTSE. Okay, so the FTSE's not as strong, but you know, characteristics all are bullish. You pull back, you have no volume, right? You come back in, you find support, you flip around, you got volume coming back into it on the way up. This will go after the swing point high, 66.96. Hong Kong. All right, so they get over the highs last week into resistance. Okay, so the bottom of it has 107 billion. You're coming into it with 93. So you don't have the volume coming into it. You get turned back last week. I wouldn't be surprised with what's happening everywhere that they'll try to go right back into it. They had pretty good volume. They'll try to go right back into it, and if they can get into it, they'll take and test this high. 22,470 is the low, 23,512 is the high. Has about 104 billion. So I would think that they go right back into that on a weekly basis. Let's see what the daily looks like. And the pullback on the daily looks like that. So they never got the retest regen. That high was 22,695. And they didn't quite get to it. 22, almost to it, 100 points away. Yeah, they could get a retest here tonight, but it looks to me like they're going to push up again, just given the 4-day consolidation with no pullback. Korea's been on a heck of a run. Korea's been straight up. You can see it here, ABCD structure up. Let's see what that measures to. 1770, 19, so that's about 150, right? Onto this, gets you about almost 2,000. And we actually just hit it. So we just finished the ABCD up and into a swing point high. That volume there is 1.7. We did 1.4. Okay, so on the weekly, it's finished off what it wanted to. On the daily, now look at this. So you got a doji at the top with volume. You pull back, which is what you might expect, right? Another doji. I wouldn't be surprised to see it go test it one more time and probably fail. That high is 2017. Japan. Let's see what Japan's doing. So Japan on a weekly, comes down just where it should find support. It does. Turns back around. Now it's into resistance. The top of this bar, 14,512.28. We're at 14,4. We got the 14,561. So we got over that bar into the big bar off the top. Remember, the bar at the top has volume. It's probably going to get to the top again. 15,942. It's got to get over the swing point to do it though. 14,953. Excuse me, 15,942 at the top, so 1,000 points higher. All right, that's on the weekly. Let's see if the daily gives us a clue, and it does. On the daily, you come back. and this is a nice read here. You come back in, volume disappears. Then you test this bottom on this big bar up. You don't have as much volume. You flip back around, you close into that bar. This thing's going higher. It's going to try to get to this high over here. That high is 14,953. That's also the high on the weekly. That's the bar it's shooting for. So it's going to get over this little swing point high and then climb up to this one. So the Nikkei wants to go higher. And the last one is Taiwan. Let's see what that one is. And then unless you got any questions, I'll leave it at that for tonight. So Taiwan, 8265, got to 8238. It's doing 10.4 into 12. Okay, so it doesn't have the volume, but didn't test it yet. Consolidation, pulls back, no volume. This also is going to test the highs. So almost every one of the overseas markets want to try to test highs or break highs. And that is totally incongruence with what you're seeing domestically. So, you know, when you see everything doing the same thing, that says you don't want to be on the other side of it. And that's the way this market looks. All right, that's it for this evening, Sunday. I'm going to leave it at that. I will catch up with you tomorrow with the summer's news tonight. I suspect these markets are all going to try to trade higher overnight. The real test will be tomorrow is what does the S&P do with this breakout, this latest breakout. And if I switch back to a daily chart and look at the S&P, the test will be this swing point high, which it should eclipse tonight. We should break over it. If we do, then the test becomes the top, 1709. Folks, thanks for being there. I'm L.A. Little. This is and was your weekly TA wrap. Have yourself a great night, and I'll catch you next time. Take care.